Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something really quite personal, but also surprisingly scientific.
That's right. We're talking about smell,
Yeah,
specifically body odor, and the sort of hidden ways it might play a role in, well, human attraction, how we connect.
exactly. And we're going to focus on some pretty fascinating recent research, too, including some findings around male same-sex attraction.
We've got quite a mix of sources lined up, articles, research summaries, essays, all looking at this from different angles, biological, psychological,
Uh,
even social.
Think of it like we're peeling back the layers on a sense we often just ignore.
Yeah, or maybe take for granted.
Right. So our mission today, let's unpack what the science is really telling us about how our noses might be kind of subconsciously guiding us, who we're drawn to, how we feel, that quiet conversation our bodies might be having.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's kick things off with something really intriguing. It was highlighted in one of our sources, an article in Gaiety, but it actually references research from way back in 2005.
Ah, yes, that study. The core idea that came out then was, well, kind of provocative. It suggested that gay and bisexual men might, perhaps subconsciously, be able to recognize other queer men just from their armpit odor.
Just from the scent.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
And the researchers, Charles Wysocki and Yolanda Martins, they also found something related to choosing partners. It looked like gay men actually showed a preference for the body odors of other gay men.
Okay, wow. So what did they make of that back then?
Well, their initial thought was that this could be evidence, that gender preference has some biological component, something reflected both in the scent a person produces.
And how they perceive scents from others.
Exactly, how their brain is sort of tuned to respond to certain chemical signals based on their orientation.
So it's not just, I like this smell. It's deeper.
Hmm.
Biological tuning. That actually leads us quite nicely into this whole idea of pheromones. One essay called them the body's invisible language.
That's a really good way to put it. Imagine these tiny chemical signals, right? Released often from places like the armpits. We don't consciously smell them, like, say, coffee brewing.
Right, they're subconscious signals.
Yeah, potentially. They might bypass our conscious awareness, but still influence our behavior
Wow.
somehow. Maybe carrying information about our genes, our emotional state, perhaps signaling things like compatibility or even dominance in some contexts, like a primal comms channel.
And this is where the more recent research really digs in, right? Looking at specific chemicals, they call them putative pheromones, meaning they think they might be pheromones.
Absolutely. They're trying to pin down which chemicals are doing what. A really key study here is from 2014 by Zhu and colleagues. It gets cited a lot.
Okay, what do they do?
So they used two specific compounds. One is androstenedione, that's a steroid found in male sweat. The other is estradiol, which is generally associated with females.
And they have people smell these.
Yes, while looking at these ambiguous, sort of gender-neutral human figures on a screen, you couldn't easily tell if they were meant to be male or female.
Ah, clever setup. And what happened? This is where it gets really interesting.
It really is. Okay, so smelling the male sweat compound, androstenedione, it actually biased gay men and straight women towards seeing the figure as male.
But not straight men.
Exactly. Straight men weren't swayed in the same way by that particular compound. And then when people smelled the female-associated one, estradiol, it was the straight men who were more likely to perceive the figure as female.
Wow. Okay, so the big takeaway there is what?
It's pretty powerful. It suggests these chemical signals do communicate something, maybe related to gender or attraction, but crucially, it only seems to register in a specific way if the person smelling it is subconsciously oriented towards the source of that scent.
So male-linked scent signals male specifically to brains attracted to men, whether they're gay men or straight women. It's like our sense of smell is fundamentally wired into our orientation.
That's what it points towards. And then building on that, there was another study in 2019 by Yu and colleagues. They took it like a step further.
How so?
They wondered if these scent signals could also maybe influence how we perceive a potential partner's mood or receptiveness, not just their gender.
So, like, could a scent make someone seem happier or more approachable?
Kind of, yeah. They exposed straight men and women to really low, undetectable levels of these same compounds, androstenedione or estradiol, while they watched animations of figures showing different emotions.
Okay. And did it change how they saw the emotions?
It did, and it was, again, sex-specific. So when straight women smelled the male sweat compound, they were more likely to judge the male figures as seeming happier or more relaxed.
And for straight men?
Smelling the female odor made them more likely to see the female features in that more positive, receptive light. It wasn't conscious, the sense just seemed to sort of prime them.
Priming them to see welcoming signals from the gender they're usually attracted to.
Exactly. Subtly nudging their perception towards seeing emotional receptivity.
Okay, so sense influence perception. But what's physically happening? You mentioned brain stuff earlier. Our sources point to some specific brain findings.
Yeah, this is crucial. There's evidence linking these putative pheromones to actual brain activity, specifically a region called the hypothalamus.
The hypothalamus. Remind us what that does.
Think of it as a deep brain control center, really important for basic drives, hormones, and, yes, sexual behavior and attraction.
Okay. And the link.
Well, studies found that smelling that male compound, androstenedione, actually activates the hypothalamus in gay men and straight women. But
not in straight men's.
correct. Their hypothalamy didn't show the same activation to that male scent, and conversely, a female-associated scent tended to activate the hypothalamus in straight men.
That's pretty direct. A biological response in a key brain area, tuned precisely to sexual orientation.
It really underscores that biological link, doesn't it? And it gets even more specific when you bring in hormones. A 2021 study, I think led by Chen, looked at oxytocin and vasopressin.
Ah, the bonding hormones. How do they fit in?
Well, this study looked at the mechanism. Get this. They found if they used drugs to temporarily block the receptors for oxytocin and vasopressin, then those subconscious effects of the sense vanished. The androstenedione and estratrainol no longer biased people's perception of the ambiguous figures.
Wow, blocking the hormones blocked the scent effect.
Totally. But then, and this is the really cool part, if they administered extra oxytocin,
It came back.
it actually enhanced the effect. People became even more sensitive to those gendered chemical signals.
Okay, so the hormones aren't just floating around. They're actively involved in decoding or amplifying these scent messages related to attraction.
Exactly. It's like the scent carries the message, but the hormones are like the volume knob or the decoder ring, determining how strongly we process that subtle chemical information. It connects the brain response, the hormones, and these scent cues all together.
That's incredibly intricate. Now, beyond direct attraction, our sources mentioned other biological ideas, like genetic compatibility, something about the immune system.
Right, the MHC theory, major histocompatibility complex. It's a complex set of genes related to the immune system. The theory, in simple terms, is that we might be subconsciously drawn to the sense of people whose MHC genes are different from our own.
And the evolutionary idea is better immune systems for potential offspring.
That's often the angle, yeah. More diverse immune genes could be an advantage. But you know, the idea that scent might signal complementary traits could potentially extend beyond just reproduction.
How so?
Well, it might subtly influence who we bond with even in non-romantic ways, perhaps fostering a kind of beneficial diversity within social groups. It's another layer where scent could be playing a role in our connections, even platonically.
Interesting. So broadening it out from biology,
Yeah.
the essay you mentioned also touched on psychological and social aspects.
It did. It explored how even in humans, where it's much more subtle and filtered by culture than in animals, scent might play these other quiet roles.
Like what? Social hierarchy?
Potentially in a very muted way. Think about unconscious signals related to health, maybe even stress levels, picked up through scent. Could that subtly influence social perceptions? It's complex and definitely not as clear-cut as animal dominant signals, but it's a possibility.
And what about the connection to comfort and familiarity? That feels really intuitive.
Oh, absolutely. This is a huge one. Our olfactory system, the smell part of the brain, has really direct connections to the limbic system. That includes the hippocampus for memory and the amygdala for emotion.
Which is why a smell can just instantly take you back.
Right.
Or trigger a strong feeling.
Precisely. A familiar scent, especially from someone close to us, can evoke powerful emotions, vivid memories, and a real sense of comfort, of security.
It's like social glue, as the essay put it.
Exactly. That familiar scent of a partner, a friend, a family member. It reinforces those bonds, builds intimacy, gives you that feeling of belonging. It ties into attachment theory, really.
And even when someone's not there, like smelling their sweater or pillow.
Yes. Even that provides a tangible sense of connection and comfort. It just shows how deeply embedded scent is in our emotional lives and our closest relationships.
Okay, so let's try and pull all these threads together. We've got the early findings on preference, the specific chemical signals biasing perception, the brain reacting differently based on orientation, hormones acting as decoders, potential genetic links, and these deep ties to comfort and social bonding. What's the big picture here?
Well, I think the research, especially the more recent work, really strengthens the case that body odors and these chemical signals aren't just background noise. They genuinely seem to contribute, often subconsciously, to both who we're attracted to and how we connect socially.
And the link to sexual orientation seems particularly strong in the research.
It does. The specific brain responses, the hormonal influences. They really highlight how our perception of these scents is deeply intertwined with our fundamental orientation. It suggests our noses are involved in mate selection and social connection in ways that align with our biology.
So our sense of smell is having this whole hidden conversation.
A complex, subtle conversation that definitely adds an invisible dimension to what we call chemistry between people. So thinking about all this, what does it mean for you listening?
Well, I think this deep dive really shows just how much of our perception, our gut feelings about people, our behavior, might be shaped by biological signals we're not even aware of processing.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you this glimpse into hidden forces that could be influencing who you're drawn to, how you interact, even how safe or connected you feel with others. It definitely adds layers, right, to understanding attraction in our bonds.
It really does. Adds a lot of complexity.
So here's a final thought, something for you to consider after we wrap up. If these subtle, invisible chemical signals can nudge who we find appealing, shape how we perceive their emotions, literally trigger different responses in our brains based on attraction, and affect how comforted we feel, what does that really imply about the conscious choices we think we're making when we form relationships?
Right. How much of that chemistry we feel is actually, well, invisible chemistry happening beneath the surface? Something to think about.
Yeah.